You know that feeling when your track is almost there, but something's missing? That's where Con 417 comes in. Edgar Diaz and his team offer professional music production, mixing, and sound engineering that takes your sound from good to unforgettable. Whether you're recording at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., Con 417 is ready because where music never sleeps, your creativity doesn't have to either. Ready to elevate your tracks? Visit EdgarSDiaz.com, that's EDGARSDIAZ.com, or tap the link in the description to send your tracks to Edgar Diaz today for professional mixing and sound engineering. EdgarSDiaz.com, where music never sleeps. Find them online or check them out on Instagram at EdgarSDiazMusic. Welcome to the 4th season of Heard, Afros Audio Interview Series. My guest today is Mike Sargent. How are you today, man?
I'm okay, Talib. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. It's great to connect with you here. I definitely have some awesome questions to talk about your career path, what you've been doing in media, and I'm excited to jump in. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, Mike, you worked across radio, television, film, and podcasting for decades. When someone asks what you actually do, how do you describe your work today?
That's an interesting question because I've been asked this and I've been pinned against the wall. I had a friend of mine who he would say, well, so when you're at a party and people say, what do you do? What do you say? I guess I'm a multi-hyphenate, but at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller. So I enjoy storytelling in all its forms. My original training was as an illustrator. So I went to Parsons School of Design. But I ended up falling in love with radio drama specifically. That led to theater, and I always loved film. Television, we could have another conversation about that. But yeah, I see myself as a storyteller or a multimedia artist would be, I guess, the term.
Yeah, multimedia artist. That's a good term to use when we're doing so many things in media. I have to say we can definitely geek out on audio dramas, radio dramas. That's how I got my start in podcasting in 2017, creating my own limited series audio drama. And at the time, I was the only independent Black creator in the space. There was Issa Rae's Fruit, and there was Lorenz Tate's Bronzeville. And then there was my little audio drama, The Fussings. And so that's definitely how I got started and how Afros and Audio even became. Yes, audio drama.
Well, you're my younger brother then, because that's exactly how I got started in radio.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing it again, I was the first Black science fiction radio drama ever, but that was not my intention. I just fell in love with audio drama. So yes, we could geek out.
Yeah, and one of the things that I realized early on was that this exhaustive library of radio dramas back in the 20s and the 30s during the golden era radio, and we were not participants in that, with the exception of Richard Durham, who was the first Black radio dramatist, and that was his legacy until McCarthyism, and he got pushed out of the radio drama era. But that is like our ancestor.
Absolutely. Wow, you've done your homework, Talib.
Yes,
but yes,
sir.
no, absolutely. And there's so many things I could say about radio drama, about audio drama, and why it is in many ways a superior form to a lot of other entertainment, let's just say, because you have to engage and you have to be an active participant when you're listening to audio drama, because you have to picture it. You have to be with it. You have to understand what's going on. You have to be in that moment. You can't be on your phone or texting or doing something else, really, especially at the time radio drama was king, or radio was king. So very different, different set of listening skills or attention skills.
Yeah. And that's what really drew me to it. The two catalysts for me was The Christmas Story, watching little homie sit in front of the radio, listening to this audio drama, The Orphan Annie show, and I'm just like, what the hell is he doing? Because I have television in front of me at this age. That sparked the first interest. And then there was a drama that used to be on the radio as I was sitting in the back seat of my mother's car. And so that also piqued my interest as well. But then you think about, and this is where I was going in the beginning, this exhaustive library that we weren't a part of. And then we have podcasting where it's like, now is the time. We can create whatever we want. And I wanted to see the same type of library at a certain point of us creating. And now we have Black audio dramas exist, a full directory. of us in this space doing some great work. And it's exciting to see. It really is.
It is. It's funny because I feel like I was ahead of my time. At the time I was doing it, radio drama. People didn't
Hmm.
know what the heck that was. And I'm talking throughout my teenage years and into my 20s. People had no idea what radio drama was. And to have seen in the last 5 to 10 years, but really the last 5 years, audio
Hmm.
drama to explode like it had, and full cast with stars.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. Now everybody's rediscovered this medium where you can tell a $200 million story for a lot less money on
Oh, yeah.
audio.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's become an avenue for filmmakers, multimedia folks like yourself to continue to build portfolios as they pursue their film or their television pilot getting greenlit or whatever it is. Audio dramas has become that space where you can continue to create, continue to write scripts and produce and direct in a way that the gatekeeping isn't there like it is in the other industries.
And the gatekeeping is not there on two levels, okay? The gatekeeping is not there in regards to the stories you can tell, but the gatekeeping is also not there into what you can think of. If you were writing a screenplay and you want to get it made, okay,
Hmm.
to have an idea of the budget,
Yeah.
and there are gatekeepers for that, So from a story standpoint, sure, sky's the limit, but not only the story, but just your ability to do it, the
Hmm.
ability to get something done. Of course, you can have the prestige and big budget and big name stars, but even if you went that route, we're still talking a fraction of what it would be to produce a TV series or a movie or anything like that. And I love that. And
Hmm.
I really, really think that Afrofuturism is going to be a huge part of this new catalog you're talking about.
Absolutely. It's already happening. And that's an exciting shift that we're seeing. Let's get back to the questions. So, you're chief film critic at WBAI's ReelWorld. You host Night Shift and you've been a national voice on PBS NewsHour and beyond. What does being a cultural critic mean to you right now?
Another interesting question. To me, being a cultural critic is similar to any kind of art critic or comedian. What you're doing is cultural analysis. You're kind of looking at
Hmm.
things. And as a person of color, it was very important to me as a film critic, because when I came into the film critic business almost 20 years ago now, there were blacks doing it, or any, let's just say non-whites, period.
Hmm.
And so I co-founded the African American Film Critics Association. And then about 6 years later, started another group called the Black Film Critics Circle. And largely because I felt like there were all these groups, there were all these awards, there were all these critics, but there were a lot of films coming out that really, in my opinion, often white critics didn't get the importance of, let's say, a black themed film,
Hmm.
and they were dismissive of them. And when I first started, it was very important to me to get quoted, and so I would get quoted in the newspapers and then on TV, those
Hmm.
quotes, those blurbs, which is, ridiculous looking back now. But because I never saw us speaking about our own
Yeah.
films, it had to be validated. So I feel as a cultural critic, I can offer perspective that may not be
Absolutely.
heard. And it also gives me sort of a pulse on pop culture. I think being a cultural critic is being like an anthropologist in a way, where the stories that are popular in any given time speak of the time that they
Hmm.
come from. So watching those things, and again, always being a science fiction fan, so it's always look at what the humans are doing. So I enjoy being a cultural critic because it keeps me in touch and I have something to say.
Yeah, for sure. And you co-host Brown and Black on the Sonoro Network, a Webby and Signal Gold award-winning show. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
What makes that show work? What do you think listeners come back for?
I think they come back for the original concept of the show. We're on hiatus now, but we did it straight for over 3 years, and I feel honored to have won those awards. But the idea that Jack Rico and I had was, he's Latino and I'm African American, and I'm fascinated by Latino culture. I've constantly learning, and I've worked in all Latino spaces a number of times. And he, at the same time, especially, and he said this on the show, after George Floyd, there were a lot of things he just kind of took for granted about African-American culture, and he educated himself. And we both came with kind of an interest in hearing what the other had to say about things that were going on. So the show is, we describe it as the intersection between race and pop culture. So he's the Latino Mike Sargent, and I'm the Black Jack Rico. And that's how we've been on the show. And I think people come back because they want to hear that perspective, not just our perspective, but just the unique perspective we both have from having been journalists and covering what we do. And that leads into what I think makes a successful show anyway, which is a perspective. People want perspective, even if they think that they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And they want authentic perspective, this genuine curiosity about what's happening in the world, what's happening between one another. And for most people, we don't like to admit the blind spots that we naturally have.
100%.
And the only way to move through those blind spots, the saying, people don't know what they don't know, is to share perspectives.
100%. I've always wondered why cultural pride has to equal cultural prejudice. Yeah, my culture is great, but I'm interested in yours too. I've never understood that. It's sort of an American value, But I agree with you. That authentic perspective, authentic point of view that's how you learn. That's how you grow.
Yeah. It's one of the only ways is to allow space for other experiences, for sure. So that's great. And I really love that Brown and Black was what you all created. And I'm sure that it most likely changed a lot of people's perspectives on what it means to live alongside one another, sharing and naturally understanding that all of us are here. We all get to go and create and build around the lives that we live and how we get to experience this life together. So I commend you both for that work that you did. Thank you for that, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So on Too Fast, Two Films, you're dissecting cinema from another angle. How does your approach shift between those shows, and what does each format allow you to explore? And first, before we start with that question, please elaborate on Too Fast, Two Films.
Well, Too Fast, Two Films is the film review podcast. It's weekly. We review 2 films a week. Again, it's a diverse team. He's white, I'm black. His name is Jackson Murphy. He won an Emmy as like the youngest film critic ever. He's been reviewing films since he was 8 years old. He's grown up now, but he's sort of like a child prodigy in that respect. So we do 2 films a week, and it's called Too Fast, Two Films because it's in 10 minutes. We give our quick takes on these films. And because, we're very different worlds, very different generations. He's in his early 20s, and he has his perspective on films. I have my perspective on films, and I think it works. We've been doing it for, I guess we're coming into our at least 6 years now. So.
Wow. Okay. How did it come about?
All right. I have a lot of twists and turns in my life. Okay. There was a period, and that's Black History Month. So I can tell you some of my personal Black history. We still live in an age, and we were just talking about it earlier, where you're the first or one of the only Blacks being something. So I'd been a film critic for about 10 years and on radio. And I'm a radio guy. I've been in radio for a long time now. I got a face for radio. But out of the blue, I got the opportunity to have a TV show. And it turned out to be the first African-American hosted film review show ever, which, again, was not my intention. But when it happened, I was like, It was called Arise on Screen. And my edict, for the most part, was I always wanted to have other critics of color or women, because women also were, as rare as Black folks reviewing film. But the exception was Jackson, because, again, he was still a teenager at the time, and my producer knew who he was. And so when I had that show, I had the show for a couple of years, and we had a good run. And then when it was over, we stayed in touch, and he approached me. He said he wanted to do something together, because he enjoyed the chemistry we had. We get along very well. And I kind of was his idea to do something, but he brings something to the table. I'm sure over the years I've gotten approached by a lot of people. Like, hey, we should do something together. Like, you do everything and I'll just sit there and talk. So that's how it came about.
Nice. All right. And so What does each format allow you to explore as you approach the shift between these shows that you do?
Okay. I'll start with Night Shift. I call it a late night magazine. I'm on 10 p.m. till midnight on Monday nights. And I've been doing that show longer than anything. I've been doing that show for a very long time. The theme of the show is that life is like science fiction. So very often, coming back to cultural analysis, talk about things, topics that often seem like science fiction, but they weren't. Now, that the caveat there now is since COVID, everybody gets it. I feel like I was a prophet. Life is completely like science fiction now. And now we're in like this dystopian science fiction. But the freedom that gives me, it's a 2-hour show. It used to be a 3-hour show. I can cover anything. I can have anybody I want on. And I've had on all kinds of folks. And as a film critic, interviews I would do on my other show, ReelWorld, which is just a straight film review show. But on Night Shift, because I had a couple hours as opposed to ReelWorld's a half-hour show. So I review films, I'll have interviews, but the interviews are like 7 to 10 minutes if I'm reviewing films. Whereas on Night Shift, I could do long form. I've had live shows. I've been doing it a long time. I could tell you all kinds of stories that surprise people who have come on the show. But I've also been able to interview all kinds of people, not just film, music. I've interviewed Wynton Marsalis. I've interviewed Ryuichi Sakamoto. I've interviewed all kinds of artists that I'm interested in. But at the same time, it's been a place where I could explore things. I interviewed Richard Bandler, the creator of neurolinguistic programming. I interviewed Shakti Gawain and all these self-help gurus. And I've had on people who channel entities, and I've been able to explore the world on a show like Night Shift. So that's what that gives me. ReelWorld gives me, the focus. I do that generally alone. And I'm reviewing the film, playing the trailer, giving my take on it. It gives me the opportunity to speak on the film, but also I have a lot of film knowledge, so I can refer things. If a film comes out and I'm familiar with the director or I like his work, I can do a little mini bio on this director came into being because blah, 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 blah. So it allows me to be the film critic. And the other things that I do, like being on PBS NewsHour, and I used to be on Fox Business News. I used to be on that pretty regularly. I used to call myself a bipartisan film critic, okay? Because being on Arise led me to all the other TV, because I've done Al Jazeera, I've done PIX, and, TV is a very different animal. You talk about disciplines. Having come from radio, I wasn't really prepared for TV. Like what we're doing now, we can have warm-up questions and we can talk and we can geek out and then come back. On TV, you got to, as my producer would say, you got to get to it. So if I have an interview with Denzel for his latest film, whereas for radio, they might have given me 20 minutes. For TV, when I would come in and there's a setup, you have 4 to 7 minutes, maybe just 4 minutes. And you've got to be able to bond with them, get some good answers, and move on. So TV, even having the interviews, being the host and whatnot, it taught me how to be concise, how to get to it, as it were. And then, once you've hosted a show, guesting on somebody's show, that's a breeze. Like, I can talk in sound bites if you want me to throughout the whole evening. So each of those has allowed me to exercise a different muscle that are similar. So Brown and Black is more cultural commentary because we're not just talking about film, where Night Shift allows me, the broad spectrum. ReelWorld is film and Too Fast is getting to it.
Yeah.
Was that
Wow,
answer? Did I?
it answers that. It more than answers. It's really exciting to hear about your work. That's really cool.
Critiquing stories and culture is very different than creating stories and culture. So I enjoy that probably even more.
Yeah.
Can relate.
Nice. And you've said it's no longer enough to just sound good. And as podcasting moves toward video, what are creators misunderstanding, in your opinion, about being on camera?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what you said before. I think, yes, you do need to be aware and get good at being on camera. But I also think you have to be comfortable enough to be yourself, and in radio, there was always this idea that you had a persona, you have a radio persona, and what's changed with social media is that people are just themselves. If you're comfortable being yourself, and ideally your best self, your most articulate self, even though sometimes it's just being your most outrageous self, but I think what podcasters need to understand is that not only do you need to be yourself and you need to have that authentic point of view, but you need to understand why people are listening to you. Why are they tuning? They're not tuning in so much to see you as they are for the content you're giving them. It sounds like a cliche, content is king. It always will be. It's important to sound good. It's important to look good or as good as you can. But at the same time, there's not a whole lot of production value, but what they're bringing is not production value. Now, if you're going to bother to have a podcast, you should definitely give me something pleasant to look at. You're not doing like a 2-minute Instagram rant. So I think it's important to balance the two, to have good content, to be comfortable, be authentic. Yeah, you should definitely do a green screen if you have to, but it should look like something.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. As you can see, I put a lot of effort in. But one of the things
I
for me
agree. I
is,
think you should.
yeah, as a creator, for me, it's like I want to have creativity around me. I want it to soak into my own body so that I can embody those folks around me. I put my ancestors behind us. I put music and all of these things around me just so I can feel the part. Because I am a creative, I'm choosing what influences what I do.
You said it right there. What influences you and what inspires you. So you have to be surrounded by what inspires you, because there are going to be times when you're not feeling it. But if you can look up and you see, yeah, exactly. I think if you have a space like what you have behind you, it's not only things that influence you, but it's, you could have any album up there, but you got Curtis Mayfield. Curtis Mayfield means something specifically to you.
Yeah.
So your environment, and again, I think that I would take the same thing for a podcast. I mean, you could have on air behind you, but I think it's better to have something that speaks of you. If you're going to do that, I definitely have some Zoom backgrounds that I use that are me.
Yeah. And I choose specifically, like I chose Curtis Mayfield today because I consider you somewhat of a multimedia genius.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a super fly.
That too. I do consider you super fly. But yeah, it's those things where you call into the space what it means to really be confident in who you are and what you do, and to experiment and explore. Like the intros of most of the songs can take you to another world. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where we have so much to be inspired by. We stand on the shoulder of giants. That's not just a saying. We absolutely do. Yeah.
No, I'll give you just a slight sidebar anecdotally about Superfly. I recently, last year, they re-released Superfly TNT, and they did a blaxploitation box set. That and a couple other films. And I did the commentary. So
nice.
So
we will definitely talk about how I can get my hands on that.
Sure.
That's awesome. So you argue that the real challenge now isn't discovery, it's retention with intent. What does a show with strong retention actually do differently?
I think a show with strong retention, and again, you can see for anything that becomes popular, look at anything in social media, people's feeds. Why do people have so many followers? Okay. They have followers because the perspective they're giving, the things that they're covering, and the way they're covering them have impact. And not just impact, but value. Because at the end of the day, like what value, I have a metric to me in terms of anybody I want to bring into my life, whether they're a romantic, friend, colleague, whatever. Question, is my life better with this person in it? And I think that people unconsciously make that same choice about what they quote unquote subscribe to. We live in an a la carte society where whatever it is that you want, you can get it when you want it. And to retain people is for them to feel that keeping up with you, listening to you each week or however often you do whatever you do is a value to them. They're going to get something out of it, whether they're going to get information, whether they're going to be amused, whether they're going to get perspective. And that's why it's important to understand what people are getting out of what you're putting out. So that's how you retain. It can't just be topical, it's got to be of value. And in many ways, it'll often be timeless. People will go back and listen to your old stuff because they just discovered you.
For sure. And that really comes in depicting, as you mentioned before, your best self, your best perspective, your opinion that is truly yours and not anyone else's. We think about classic music, we talk about classic films. There's a reason why we consider those specific ones classic when 100 other things came out at the same exact time, and we've decided that this is the one that's the classic. This is the one that we'll keep coming back to.
I agree.
There's a reason for that.
I agree. And I'll add to it, something else that you've done here in this podcast is you've made yourself an expert on the topic. You can call up Richard Durham. You can say this about that. You can know when you were doing what you were doing, you had done the research, you had done your homework on who else was out there, So, we've all been interviewed by somebody who hasn't done their homework. Okay. And there's a feeling. So it's the same thing with a podcast. I mean, people want an opinion, but they want an informed opinion. If you're going to do the Jelly Bean show, you should be Mr. Jelly Bean. You should be like, I can tell you who invented the jelly bean and going the jelly bean quotes of 18th century, you should be the jelly bean guy, because your audience is tuning in because of your knowledge of jelly beans.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's what they came here for.
Right. And again, I'll also add, there used to be such a thing as when people worked in offices, there used to be such a thing as water cooler talk, they call it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think at the end of the day, people often listen to podcasts and then they've learned something and then they share it with their friend or have something informed to say about something that's going on because they listen to your podcast.
Yeah, for sure. The added value. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've pointed out, and I think this is gold and I can't wait for your response here. You've pointed out that the middle of an episode is where shows win or lose audiences. When you listen to a podcast, what tells you whether that middle is earning its keep?
In terms of storytelling, my favorite kind of storytelling is where you dig a hole and you fill it. And I think the same thing goes for a narrative as a documentary, okay? And something that's talking about fact, or if you're just talking about fiction or an audio drama or a roundtable. Is there a hole that was built? Like, do I understand what we're going to be talking about today? There are questions about it that are going to be answered. And halfway through, am I getting answers? Am I getting information? Am I learning? Am I already gaining from this podcast? If you have a Substack does this thing where, you read up to a certain point and then you got to pay. And the reason they can do that is because you've already gained something. So you're willing to pay to get more. And I think that if I've already gained something by listening 12 minutes in, 15 minutes in, then I'm willing to invest more time because it's worth my time. And that's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Time is its own currency.
100%. What you're trying to get people to do is give you their time with your podcast or your audio drama or whatever it is you've created. Is it worth my time? And can I distract them away from all the other distractions that they have going on in their lives?
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of times where I've sent something to someone. I'm like, listen to this while you are washing the dishes or driving or doing something. My one request is that you're not multitasking or preoccupied with what's coming up next. Just focus, and that's hard for us in this day.
It is.
It really is.
And that's your goal. Your goal should be when you're telling a story and then somebody goes, and then what happened? Yeah. That's what you want people to feel without saying it.
Absolutely. And similar to what we've just been speaking on, you said clarity matters more than polish. When a show is unclear about what it's for, what do you hear?
Meandering, going off the point, tangents. It's okay to go on a tangent, but you got to come back. You got to bring it back home. Yeah. So clarity, I think, is important. If you do an interview and you let the guest run away with the question, you're not doing a good interview. You've got to bring it back. And great guests can do that. You can ask one question, they go on and on and on and on and on. You got to bring it back. You got to rein it in. Yeah. So I think that speaks to that clarity, so you should be clear on what you're trying to get out of that interview. You should be clear on what you're trying to bring across in this podcast, in the story you're telling. Again, I think this crosses all disciplines. If you're working on a story and it's a lot longer than you need it to be, you have to go back and look and say, okay, where have I said what I need to say more than once? Have I already said this? So being clear on what you want to say and, like I said, getting to it, I think helps. That's the one thing that TV really helped with, staying focused, being clear, getting clarity.
Yeah, for sure. And I always love speaking with folks who have backgrounds like yourself because I know that it has and it does serve to inform the work. It's always going to be like this foundation, a strong foundation that you can build off of. And it's something that not a lot of indie podcasters bring to the genre and to the medium, but it's something that can be developed. It's a muscle that you flex it enough, you stretch enough, and you're intentional about how you want to become on the mic, discover yourself, discover your voice. It is something that can be done, but I feel like there is less priority to really hone the skill and just continue to create content. I've seen it happen, and that's the beauty of podcasting as well. When you continue to create, is that even the listeners can tell, oh, wow, they're growing. I heard the first episode and now they're here in season 3. And wow, listen to how they craft their questions down, how they do coax the guests right back into where they were trying to go. So it's something that is possible. But when you see someone who's had the journalist background, been on television, for myself even, didn't start out that way, it's something that I can pick up on right away. Like they know what they're doing, and that's really cool. And I can learn from that. And I think that's the greatness about this industry.
I 1,000% agree. And I have to say, I'm glad you brought this up because I do think it's very important to be self-aware and aware of the listener. Because it's easy to get into a conversation and you talk about people who it takes them a while to get there. And it takes everybody a while. But podcasts should sound like just a conversation, but it's a controlled conversation. It's something where there's an agenda and someone's got to be in charge of the agenda. Okay. So in the case of you're the host. We can talk about a few things, but there are certain points you want to make sure we get to. So you're guiding the question or the person you're talking to in a certain direction because you have things that you want to make sure get covered. And I think that comes with time, like you said. And I think people listen to podcasts, and if you're doing your job well, it should seem almost invisible. People shouldn't feel like, okay, now question number 3. It should feel like just a natural flow. And that's where the professional comes in, where you have a natural flow of the conversation. Often, most professionals have some sort of guideline. They may have given questions. That was the thing that threw me when I was doing TV, was like, wait, I want spontaneity. And like, no, we have 7 minutes. And even within that framework, get that energy, that spontaneity. Now, TV is a lot more restrictive than podcasting. You have a lot of time. And I think people get fooled by hearing a Joe Rogan who could just talk for 3-4 hours. You got to be at a certain place for people to listen to you for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah,
most people,
sure.
You're going to just get bored. So less is more. It's another cliche. That's very true.
And I would even say that most people, we don't have enough time in the day unless that's all you're doing with your life. So for sure. And like I said, we're not done with the audio drama conversation. You're bringing audio drama back into your own work, and you said Afrofuturism will be central to the future of storytelling. Why now, and what feels ripe about this moment for you?
One of the things, Afrofuturism has exploded in the last 5-7 years. And there are a lot of reasons why. I think one, because how many more variations or iterations or retellings of the same stories and the same scenarios can we see? There's just so many. There was another Dracula movie this year, But at a certain point, audiences are hungry for something more. I think Black Panther did so well, not because it was the best Marvel movie, but because nobody had ever seen anything like this. Country that hasn't been colonized, that in itself was just groundbreaking. You'd never seen it before. So there's so many stories. And what I see out there in terms of Afrofuturism, there's so many storytellers who have stories they want to tell. And as they discover this medium, they're absolutely going to go there. That's my opinion, because I see so much Afrofuturism out there, graphic novels, things like that. But I think it's going to explode. I think both horror and science fiction. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Yasha Hitendi. He's a writer-director. He started out in the BBC. Okay. Black British dude. And then he did his own thing. It's a full cast audio drama with music, sound effects, and it's amazing. We interviewed him on Brown and Black to talk about it. And he talked about how at the BBC, he was one of the only Black actors there and participating and doing what he did. And He's originally from Zimbabwe and he grew up in the UK. But the fact that someone who's got films to his credit, he's got television to his credit, but for his first piece, he did a full cast horror audio drama. You got to love that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I think it's going to be huge because there's so much room for it. There's so much room for storytelling. And again, the gatekeeping is not there. You can do a full cast, great sounding audio drama. When I did the James Scott, my vision for it, and James Scott is the audio drama that I started. I did it as radio drama when I first got into radio. And then I redid it as a 24-track science fiction audio drama. And my idea was I wanted it to sound like a movie. Just, you have to create the movie in your head. And the piece that Nyasha did, by the way, is called Sacrilege, Curse of the Mbiri. That's Mbirwi. But when I did it, that was my vision. And again, I would love to have made the James Scott into a $150 million movie, but in a way I did because I could do the audio drama. And seeing where we are today with the explosion of Afrofuturism and all the writers out there and all the stories out there, a year from now, you'll come back to this conversation. You go, Mike said this was going to explode. I think it is.
Yeah, and it'll be amazing and beautiful to see and experience. And I 100% agree with you that this is coming because sky's the limit and there is a lane, there's space for more of that, especially in podcasting, of course, with this still being an evolving medium. We've seen it in writing, we've seen it in film, not so much, but we've seen it. Audio dramas, and again, back to our original point, thinking about the library that was, what can we do in this space now? And when we think about us as superheroes, when we think about us as folks that can do things that are beyond the supernatural and all these sorts of things, we don't have enough of those stories. And as we could tell by Black Panther, people are hungry for it.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I can liken it to what's been called the Blaxploitation era. The studios didn't realize people were hungry for it until Melvin Van Peebles did Sweet Sweetback, and it made all this money, and he did it without a studio. And they were like, what? So there wouldn't be Superfly and all these other things only came about because they realized people were hungry for it. And I don't think it's just Black folks. I think just interesting and good stories. At the end of the day, like I said, content is king. You have a really good story, people are going to watch it. People are going to listen. People are going to get into it. That's, like you said, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it really is. So thank you for just the work that you've done in this. You've been a trailblazer, you've been a catalyst, a pioneer, and that's exciting. That's exciting because now I want to talk about the fact that we are working together at a school in Harlem. And I mentioned to you offline, but I'll say it publicly, that I'm so grateful that a person of your caliber, your experience, and just your love and joy for the medium, the genres that we all consume and enjoy, you're the person in front of these young people, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. You've done all this work, and now you're here standing in the classroom with some wide-eyed babies trying to understand what podcasting is. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Well, yes, sure. I thought you were going to say, now you're training the next generation. But that's how it feels because I'm seeing them discover all the things that audio has to offer. Of course, they all want to get on and, can we rap now? You know, they all want to do that. They see a microphone, they got to get on it. But getting them to learn the equipment, seeing them fall in love with editing and wanting to be the person to edit and want to say things and have their say on microphone and being amazed by what you can do now with the technology, with programs like Descript. They're enjoying it. You can see that in the future. Now, what I enjoy most is that it's an option. It's something that you never considered before, that they may consider it. It may not stay with them right now, but down the line, it could be like, or who knows what opportunity could come to them later in life and they go, oh, I know all this already because I took that, It's rewarding to work with children and to see them coming into their own, discovering they have natural tendencies they didn't know they had. Some of them are very good at editing. It's like, all right, I'll just show you. Just go ahead, show me what do you want to do, and they just go ahead and do it. So it's a rewarding thing. I'm very glad to be doing it with you. I think it's great that you have this initiative. I'll say it's even greater that it's brown and black kids that are learning to do this. And also, this is that age too where you want to find out who you are. You don't know it, but you're trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. And I talked to people about the program. I said, it's not as if we're expecting them to come out and be audio professionals after 5th grade or podcast creators, but it's possible. Young people are creating podcasts now, but we know that we are planting a seed and creating that spark for them, as you mentioned, that possibly as they go in the future, we want to make sure that our youth don't get left behind in an industry that is building and evolving and moving and not going anywhere anytime soon. We want to make sure that our young people know the viability of this industry and this craft.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And we recently finished a Black History Month project. And I just want to do a quick quote of what our administrator said about it. And this is a direct quote. Afros in Audio did an amazing, in all caps, job during our Black History Month themed assembly. Everyone, and I do mean everyone, loved it. So thank you for that, Mike. It's all you, man.
My
The group
pleasure.
effort of the kids.
Yes,
and
it was a group
people
effort
in
for
the
sure. They
Yeah.
did a lot of the editing themselves.
Yeah. So thank you so much again for working with Afros in Audio and working with the young people, most importantly, on creating, because that's what it's all about. Letting their imagination be what moves them forward.
100%.
Yeah. So you built shows, institutions, films, and platforms that last. What separates creators, in your opinion, who build careers from those who just build on moments?
When you say build moments, what do you mean exactly?
Whether it's trends or I think I can make some money podcasting real quick, let me jump on podcasting.
Yeah, and I think it goes across the board, in music, you have what they call one-hit wonders. And those
Yep.
one-hit wonders are people who hit the zeitgeist right then. They're in the right place at the right time. But they really didn't have that much more to say. They didn't really have anything. So it's consistency. There are a lot of people who have had careers that go from one medium to another. And what they do in one medium, they're able to do in another medium and another medium. And again, that persistence of vision, that clarity of vision, that authenticity is what comes through. I mean, part of it is why we've seen the big shift in podcasts and celebrities doing podcasts and people who have a TV show. If you have a TV show, why do you need to do a podcast? Okay. Because people still will find value in it. They still want more of you. And so I think that at the end of the day, what makes people who, whether you shift from one type of medium to another, what do you have to say that's of value? What do you have to say? What are you talking about? And so I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think people who try on this or that, they might, but then what?
Yeah.
Then it's done. There are definitely people who were popular on certain platforms when they came out, and now you never hear of them anymore because they just happened to be in that moment, but they really had nothing of value to add. And at the end of the day, the people who are still here, the people who have either evolved or kept their audience are the people who had something consistent of value to offer.
Yeah, for sure.
Are these like just obvious things? But
No. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's one of the things that we learn in leadership and doing the work is that sometimes our basic information explodes people's heads, because they don't know. And so it's important to have these type of conversations, see what's possible. Some folks come on and just, okay, I'm going to be a host, to do this project. And if something else happens of it or whatever, no real agenda around it. But then they can come in and start to have these conversations, hear these conversations. And it's, oh, I can do something more. I can expand it, can extend off of something that I do, a skill I have that's professional. I can bring that into it. These transferable skills that you have brought into each medium that you've covered, that you've been a part of, I think it allows space for other folks to dream and to participate.
Thank you. And I'm going to add one more thought there to what we're talking about. I think and again, this might be a cliche or seem obvious, but when you see that there is something that doesn't exist, it's a good chance that you're the person who should be doing it.
Yeah.
If you feel like there should be, a podcast about male feminists and no one's doing a black male feminist show, and you're a black male feminist, then you should do that show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it shouldn't be just something you're doing to do or doing to be a host. You're doing it because it's something you believe in too. And that's, I think,
Yeah.
comes back to what you're talking about, being authentic. So if you authentically believe and care about whatever it is that you're doing your show about, I think you'll get others who do too.
Absolutely. Because the chances are someone discovers it and say, oh, it's not just me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the opportunity here for sure. And for the podcasters and creators listening, if they walked away with one shift in how they approach their work from this conversation, what would you want that shift to be?
Probably what I just said. You should do something that, even if it's not successful, it's still your passion. It's something you love, whatever the topic is. Rubber ducks. If you love rubber ducks, then do that rubber duck show and do it because you'll enjoy it. You won't feel like you wasted your time, because like being a good teacher should care about the subject that they're teaching, or else it's going to become a drag. So you want to be successful at something, but you want to be successful at something that means something to you. So I'd say that's the thing, whatever it is you want to talk about, because you could do a podcast about anything. But again, it should be something that you care about. Or if you feel you have a unique perspective on something that's broad, that's ongoing, do it. Talib has the How to Be a Bad Boy podcast because he knows.
Yep, I sure do. So thank you, Mike. This has been an honor to have this conversation with you, to share your work with the world, as you've already done on your own, but to create this space with you right now, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. And so please tell folks how they can connect with you, listen to the podcast, do all of that good stuff.
Well, on Instagram, I'm Mike on Screen. I'm also Mike on Screen on Facebook. I'm not there much. I have a website, themikesargent.com. As some of my guests have said, I'm highly Googleable. So if you put in Mike Sargent WBAI, you'll get all my stuff.
Awesome. Okay. And all your links will be in our show notes and descriptions. Once again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, man.